Hey guys, it's Yuta. So, I made a video about what Japanese people think of Ghost of Tsushima. And there was a review that said that the Japanese version is so good, it's as though it was originally written in Japanese. But how do characters of Ghost of Tsushima speak Japanese? That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Since the story takes place in 13th century Japan, one would expect the characters to speak Old Japanese, which is true to some extent, but I was actually surprised how modern the Japanese is. Their Japanese is based on today's Japanese, except that they use archaic words and expressions.
馬はどこにおる?
馬屋にいるかも。来て。
馬はどこにおる? Where is the horse? 馬屋にいるかも。来て。Maybe it's in the stable. Come. In this example, the only archaic word is oru, which would be iru in today's Japanese. Everything else is just contemporary Japanese. They might just use more archaic words in some situations.
ジン、ついてまいれ。者ども、続け！切り捨て！
ジン、ついてまいれ。Jin, come. 者ども、続け! Guys, follow me. 切り捨て! Slash them. There are a few archaic words here. Maire, which would be koi in today's Japanese. 者ども is also an archaic way of calling a group of people. And tei would be tero in today's Japanese. So instead of saying kiriste, we would say kiristero today. Although I'm not sure if there's any real life situations where we would use that expression. Because we don't just walk around with our katana trying to kill people today, hopefully. But these expressions are common in historical fiction. If you watch Japanese period dramas, you will hear many expressions like them. And when kids play samurai, they may use these expressions, so Japanese people are quite familiar with them. But overall, I was actually surprised how modern Ghost of Tsushima's Japanese is.
すべて私のせいです。
ジン、それでも武士か。
父上は私をかばって。
すべて私のせいです。It's all my fault. ジン、それでも武士か。Jin, are you really a samurai? 父上は私をかばって。My father defended me and... These lines pretty much sound like fictional characters today, except for chichiue, which is an archaic way of saying father. But otherwise, many anime characters, for example, speak like them. And some characters' Japanese is especially modern, for example, Yuna.
場所はわかるか?
東の海岸沿い。
攻め入るなら今しかない。
殺されるよ。
東の海岸沿い。It's along the east coast. 殺されるよ。You will get killed. All of these lines are just standard Japanese today. If you didn't have any visual input, you wouldn't think it's from a historical video game. And this is actually good news if you're learning Japanese and if you want to play this in Japanese. If you already understand a lot of contemporary Japanese, you will understand a lot. But if you don't, I can teach you the kind of Japanese that Japanese people today actually speak, which will help you play video games in Japanese. So click the link in the description and subscribe. But why is their Japanese not so archaic? I don't know the exact answer, but I have a theory. I think it's probably because most of people who play this video game are young people. So they made the Japanese very modern to make it approachable for young people. And I think historical period dramas in Japanese use more archaic words and expressions because their main demographic is our grandparents who might be more familiar with archaic Japanese. But even in period dramas, characters don't usually speak like the actual people from that period because it will be hard for us to understand. We would actually understand quite a bit because Japanese hasn't changed that much. But definitely not everything. We know this because we learn old Japanese in school. But in short, I think they wanted to make the game easy to understand. Now, I have an interesting example.
我が名は酒井仁。地頭である志村殿の甥。
我が名は酒井仁。My name is Jin Sakai. 地頭である志村殿の甥。Nephew of 志村殿, the Lord of Tsushima. You might be familiar with this way of introducing yourself if you watch a lot of anime. This is exactly how Megumin from Konosuba introduces herself.
我が名はめぐみん。アークウィザードをなりわいとし、最強の攻撃魔法爆裂魔法を操る者。
Of course, there's a huge difference between Megumin and Jin. The reason Megumin speaks like that is because she thinks it's cool. But in the world of Ghost of Tsushima, it's probably a normal way of introducing yourself. But I think it's pretty interesting to play a historical video game like this because you will know where these expressions come from. 我が名はキューベ。インキュベーターにして魔法少女と契約したし者。It's definitely fun to speak Japanese like characters from historical fiction. Japanese people sometimes do this when they want to sound playful. And if you speak Japanese, you can also incorporate some archaic words and expressions if you want to sound playful. But if you don't speak Japanese, I can teach you the kind of Japanese that real-life Japanese people today speak, which can be quite different from the kind of Japanese that textbooks teach you. So click the link and subscribe to my email group, Japanese with Yuta. Alright, see you guys soon. Ciao, ciao!